lot of our modern day reporting, especially after the arrival of AI, are expected to be of far higher in depth than what is actually produced by the students or by the people in the workforces. Because the expected depth increase is not exactly visible. So the issue is the analysis aspect. There was a time before the arrival of AI where the simple explanatory angle of internal and external analysis would have been sufficient. But however, with the deeper availability of research skills, thanks to AI, the expectations from the evaluator, examiner, and of course, yes, your senior management in the corporate is higher as well. So this video is an attempt at supporting you to improve your analysis skill in Porter's file. Let's take the first one. Gatekeeper force. Always come up with new topics. Do not go for the theory topics in graduate level, MBA level, and the corporate level reports. Always come up with your own topic. So let's take a look at the example first. Check Apple. Apple is still ahead of the game despite massive competition coming from China and others. How come? How so? Well, they got a proprietary ecosystem. iOS, App Store, iCloud, and they have the global brand trust. And the switching cost is not exactly easy because when you change from an Apple, there are other things also you have to change. So that way, Apple has been able to stay ahead of new entrants coming into the field. Now, this is a new topic to think about, and you have to think about it in a very new way also. Think about the trade barriers. Country to country, the laws, regulations, restrictions differ. There should be deep research into that to identify how much of a support or an opposite this aspect causes. Look at the last one. Sometimes the brand may be fine, but if the country where the brand is coming is having an issue, that also have an issue, huge issue in the mind of the consumer. We call it the brand trust. The country of origin matters a lot. And then the economies of scale matters in a global way. So capital you may have, but how about the unit cost management? That also may be supporting or otherwise to a new entrant. So new topics, right? It's a new thing. Next one. Again, let's go for an example. Look at Toyota. Toyota is a company that's famous for having thousands of suppliers everywhere in the world. Obvious reasons are there, like semiconductor shortages in the home turf, so they have to depend on others. And yes, the chip manufacturing is not where Japan is dominating. You have to go for some other places also. And how does Toyota maintain this massive dependency on the suppliers? Well, they develop good relationships with the suppliers. That's something that they've been renowned for. And they don't depend on one angle of source. They go for multi-country or multi-supplier sourcing. And they definitely work at improving the relationship with the suppliers by helping them develop their capacity, skills, training, etc., etc. Okay, the topics to talk about. Think about the power of the supplier, because the supplier with the availability of information and other things, right? Suppliers have the, opportunity to look for other options. They have the power. And the other way also there, the buyer also has that information power. If this supply is not up to something, and then you can look for other options, alternatives easily. So the buyer also has the power. And the culture matters a lot. Sometimes the buyer's requests depend on pretty much on the culture's requirement. Culture is hugely important in the modern world. So depends on the changes in the culture or in different economies, the way the people depend or otherwise on the supplier changes. For some products, there could be lots of suppliers. For some, there could be only one or two due to cultural issues. And then, yes, not easy to maintain prices across multiple markets, even within the same country, due to multiple reasons. So how you handle different markets with regard to pricing, again, it's a challenge. So look into that with regard to suppliers. Substitutes, a major issue. Take a look at how Netflix is handling it. That has heavy competition from Disney, Amazon Prime, and lots of pirated content. You look at TikTok, plenty. Netflix is still surviving thanks to its high variety of content and rapid, progress towards other stuff. But the piracy and the other issues are having an impact on Netflix as well, because the world has substitutes now for Netflix. So, the substitutes differ from market to market, even within the same country. You can't be exporting a product to just a single market. You may be choosing one country, but within the country, you may be looking for different markets. So these different markets may have different levels of substitutes for your products. And the substitutes, the consumer's ability to find substitution is very, very high as well, because of the technologies and the information and all that. So, and the trends, that fast consumer trends, right? Changing. Substitutes can easily change, whereas a bigger player may take time to change. So the substitution is a huge issue now. And one other thing, if you think of, the substitution is something that's thoroughly dependent on what you call as price and the performance, well, not exactly. There are other aspects also where the substitution may be considered acceptable rather than just the price or the performance. Again, look for an example. Nike, heavy competition in Europe and certain markets in America as well, from Adidas, Puma, Under Armour, right? Regional brands growing fast. Pantaloon in, Asia, right? So the major markets are pretty slow in growth, and there's heavy marketing and the sponsorship spending for Nike. And the switching costs are so easy for the customers, right? Consumers, they can easily move from one to the other. How does Nike is managing it? Well, they go for the brand storytelling heavily, and athlete endorsements, consumer digital channels, digital marketing. A lot is done by Nike to stay ahead of the competition. But it's again a huge issue, right? This rivalry between competition is not the same thing. You might have to compete with different competitors in different ways in the same market. So it's pretty uneven across different markets also. They may see a competitor less active in one market in the same country and highly active in another market. And when you go for segmentation, you have to go for very modern segmentation, not just the age and the income and the gender, right? There are deeper segments that the world needs or a brand needs to focus on. And these different segments have different heroes in different brands. So how can one brand enter it? So the competitive rivalry is easy. And whoever is there, he will not easily give up, because to enter the particular segment, the particular brand would have spent a lot of money, funds, capital. And to leave the market just because you are ahead of him is not exactly something that will easily happen, because it will hurt his reputation, bro. So the fighting is fiercely when multiple brands collide in an international marketplace. Nobody wants to give up. Yeah, I put it in a simpler way. The first one is new entrants. Take a look at it. Yeah, trade barriers, regulations, capital, and the scaling, the size, right? Scaling is that. And the brand trust, country of origin. Next one is the supply issues, right? Supplier concentration by country. Sometimes suppliers come from only one country, then the suppliers have the power, right? Switching costs, sometimes easier, sometimes harder. Then again, supply may have power. And the logistic risk could be there. Currency issues could be there. That also may result in us having to rely on one or two suppliers rather than opting out for more profitable suppliers. Buyers also have issues against suppliers. Remember that. Bargaining power of the buyers. So I call it customer command force. Take a look at the example. Coca-Cola. And always go for another example in your analysis, right? While you focus on one company for your entire report, but do not hesitate to come up with examples from related brands. That will make reading, comprehension, and understanding easier for the reader, be it the evaluator or your senior manager. So make sure of that. Take a look at Coca-Cola. The problem with Coca-Cola is, the prevalence of supermarkets in certain countries, like, USA. Big players like Walmart, Tesco, Costco, they buy huge volumes of Coke. So they have the power to set the price from even a big, huge brand like Coke. Coke can't say no. So they are, you know, I mean, they have the power. The buyer has the power against the manufacturer like Coke. So how is Coke maintaining its edge? How it's trying to control this kind of power concentration among these buyers? One is creating a consumer pull, making the consumer demand Coke by going for heavy branding and advertising. And yes, they may go for exclusive distribution. They may go for fountain contracts like, the operations run by Coke itself. But still, the buyer has huge power in the modern era, because the buyer, they're looking at shops, we are looking at supermarkets, they're looking at the intermediaries. They buy huge volumes, so they can set the pricing rules, right? Because these are global guys, global platforms. So the other manufacturer has to work with the buyer. So the buyer power is not exactly something that you can ignore. And the other aspect is, again, the culture plays a role in it. Sometimes you cannot avoid the buyer. For example, certain countries totally depend on the supermarket kind of retail sales. So just because the supermarket is calling shots, can you avoid the supermarket and go for something else? Not possible. A particular hotel, a particular country may have a premier hotel chain that dominates a huge part of the market. So you can't avoid the buyer. And remember, buyer has opportunities to look for other alternatives easily thanks to information. So it's not easy working in the buyers. Next one, the substitutions. The cultural substitution is a huge challenge. People are more culturally attuned now. For a foreign product to enter a local culture, a different culture, right? It's not exactly easy, because the product in that culture already has an advantage. It's not just the price, it's not just the quality. Other things matter as well, right? Okay, the fact that Talapakati is a highly branded Indian product does not mean, restaurant chain does not mean that it can win over Sri Lankan cityscapes easily, because we are culturally attuned to Sri Lankan style foods. So it's not easy. Take a look at elephant brands' dominance in Sri Lanka, still, despite the availability of the global brands. They are 400 milliliter thing, right? Or 100 milliliters more works well, because Sri Lanka is a sharing culture. Whereas a smaller Coke or Pepsi bottle may not have that kind of a sharing capacity. Various tiny nuances matter in culture. Substitutes are pretty good at, being tuned to those things. And yes, the trends are changing, and those changes have an impact locally. Smaller players can change faster. Larger player in the international marketplace may have trouble finding room to change. And then the competition aspect, rivalry, right? Different market growth by the region, and then the differentiation battles are there from market to market. The issue is our tendency to rely on a number of markets in the same country. These different markets may have different set of trends in our segments. So how do we face up with the rivalry? You need to have the research, and you need to give some ideas onto that for analysis. So advanced analysis of the Porter's five forces is necessary, not just the analysis of the Porter's five forces. If you go for advanced analysis in pestle, SWOT, porters, and competitor analysis, remember this, that will give you a strong foundation to develop a really excellent report overall with regard to very high degree of quality. So the effort will pay back because all the research and analysis done here would definitely play a long, huge, highly productive role in your marketing mix, your conclusions and recommendations as well. So it's well worth the effort.